It's a great street.
Hey, this is Robert Scoble, and hang out with somebody cool. Stan Slapp is working. Well, let me explain who he is, or have him explain who he is. Who are you?
My name is Stan Slapp. I own a consulting company called Slapp by remarkable coincidence, and we're renowned for achieving maximum commitment in manager, employee, and customer cultures, the three groups that decide the success of any company.
And so you help companies work on their managerial styles and their cultures. And why does a company hire you?
Well, first of all, when we're talking about a culture, we're not talking about a bunch of managers, employees, and customers. When they form a relationship with a company and become a culture, they're far more self-protective and far more intelligent, far more resistant to standard methods of corporate influence. So what we do is we solve the biggest problem in each of these cultures for a company. In a manager culture, we create emotional commitment, worth more than intellectual, financial, and physical commitment combined.
Graham talks about building a mission for people, because when they have a mission, if they're going to the moon, that really gets them involved and gets them to be more loyal and happier. Right?
Well, that's true, and Graham is right about that, as he is about so many things. The noble purpose alone, it will take a culture part of the way, but really a culture is obsessed with its own survival and emotional prosperity. That's why it exists, to protect itself. So really the key to bringing the culture along is to understand what moves it. It's not the responsibility of the culture to understand the business logic. It's the responsibility of the business to understand the culture's logic. So that's what we do. We create emotional commitment in a manager culture. So for McAfee, we dropped attrition of top talent from 35 to 5% a year, and their managers. For an employee culture, we create fierce support for strategies and goals, because you can't sell it outside if you can't sell it inside. So that for Rackspace, helping them scale that culture as they grew bigger and bigger without losing what was special. For a customer culture, the biggest commitment is if it brands you. And so we helped McAfee understand that you can't sell security, those are products. You have to sell safe, that's an emotion. CNN just hired us to redo their entire brand strategy worldwide. So it's that kind of, but it all comes from a unique understanding of how cultures work and how to work them.
How did you get into culture studying?
Or dropped on my head as a little kid. I don't know. Like originally, I was running my last real job. I mean, this was years ago. So if you have a problem with these guys, don't be bitching at me about it. My last real job was building this company called Mrs. Fields Cookies years ago, right? And that was totally discretionary effort by people who not only made the product, they collected the cash, they did everything. So I had to find a way to really reach those people. And then as we got more and more into IT, we found that this ignorance of like how a culture works and that it will have its way with you, one way or the other, was just rampant. And so we just exploded in IT. And because of this missing knowledge, this missing competency.
So you've written one book, and there's two more on the way, or something like that?
Yeah.
Explain what these books teach.
Each of the books, the three books coming from Penguin. The first one is out, called Bury My Heart at Conference Room B. Each of these books is about one of these cultures. So Bury My Heart at Conference Room B is how to resolve the biggest issue that companies face with their manager culture, which is this gaining of emotional commitment. They get intellectual commitment, financial, physical, but emotional commitment trumps them all. How do you really get that, and get that in a global management enterprise? How do you take it back to the garage and cause managers to treat the company like a personal crusade? That's what that book is. The next one coming is about the employee culture. How do you predictably hand off a management plan to an employee culture and have them protect and promote it fiercely? And the third book is for the customer culture. How do you actually become a brand? Not just branded for what you sell, but how you sell it and why you sell it.
So when you sat down with Rackspace, why did we call you in, and what did you do for us?
Well, Rackspace, so there's Rackspace fast approaching $1 billion at the time. And
this was how many years ago?
This is about 18 months ago, maybe 18 months ago. And so they are a looming...
I've been here 4 years, so in my career...
Within your career, within your time, right? And so they're a looming threat on the enemy's radar, right? And so they're climbing into the ring, to mix metaphors. They're climbing into the ring against competitors who will take them out for the sport of it. You have hyper-competitive cultures. Yep. And so Rackspace...
Yeah, Jeff Bezos at Amazon doesn't play around.
No, he doesn't, right? And really, just because he could, he would. just try and flatten the competition. And so here's Rackspace, who understands its relevancy to customers and its unique value proposition, and the whole concept of fanatical support, which is so situational, such a matter of individual discretionary effort. The whole spirit of the company. How do you grow without flattening that? How do you do all the things that are now you have to do to be appropriate? And so what we told Rackspace essentially is you do what's appropriate and then you do what's inappropriate. There have to be things at Rackspace like don't.
We're good at it, inappropriate.
Yeah, and you can't lose that. But that would be the tendency is like, oh, we got to grow up, we got to be Amazon. No, you've got to be Rackspace, but bigger. So if you can walk that rolling deck between appropriate and inappropriate when the wave of growth hits you, that's the magic that confounds competitors and astounds customers. Understanding how to scale that. And really how to move a culture along as you get into growth and how to bring new people into the culture without importing cultural viruses. We help do all that. Now, Rackspace...
that's an interesting concept, cultural virus. I'm just trying to think of what my audience is thinking right now, because a lot of them are engineers, and they're like, what are you talking about? No, but if somebody's writing code all day long, they don't think about how I fit into the organization and how culture happens or is guided, and they don't think about managing, right? They think about compiling, right?
But they are the culture. We always tell the C-suite, who's going to decide the success of your company? If you run in the company, start by crossing yourself right off the list. The employee culture has the first vote. If the employee culture wants something to happen, it's going to happen. If it doesn't, it isn't, period. And it's not the responsibility of the employee culture to understand the business logic. It's the responsibility of the business to understand the culture's logic. And so we really, even for a company as advanced as Rackspace, who really gets culture, really has great respect and affection for the culture, managing it as it grows to the new scale is what we really help. Now Rackspace went from 74 to 34 on the Fortune 100 best companies. That's a great accomplishment. They were very happy. They shared that with us. We said, we give you one more leap, you'll be above the list. You'll be on your own list, one more 40-point leap. So that would be the next goal for them.
Yeah. How do you do that? Well, we're talking to lots of companies that aren't even on that kind of list.
Right.
Is there a chance that they can get on the list, and how do they change to get on the list?
Sure.
And then let's talk about Rackspace again. How do we move up the list and get to where Facebook or Google are, right?
Well, in terms of, let's go backwards. For Rackspace, I think you just keep on keeping on. I think the knowledge, the recognition of the power of an employee culture is really critical. And understanding what's in the cultural database is proof points about how it should act, right? Because you could really say, well, if a culture is concerned about its survival and emotional prosperity, which it is, then go ahead and make the company successful. You'll keep your job and we'll tell you you're doing a great job. But that's only if the culture perceives a reliable through line between what happens to the company and what happens to the culture. That's usually not the case. For Rackspace, just keeping that conduit clean, that's the critical issue, and they'll continue to do that. For any other company, this starts with just really respecting the power of the employee culture and recognizing that neither business logic nor management authority nor any compelling competitive urgency will ever convince an employee culture to adopt a corporate cause as if it were its own.
If you don't have a good ear for culture, or in my case, I have an eye for it, because I walk into lots of corporate headquarters around the world, and you can instantly see there's a difference between, let's say, Boeing and Zappos and Rackspace and General Motors, right? There's something visual about the cultures.
Even visceral, yeah.
Yeah, you sit in Zappos's lobby, and they yell and scream as they come into work, right? That's different. And it's weird, and so if you don't have that kind of sensitivity to culture, how do you get the sensitivity? What are 3 or 4 things that you should start doing to start listening to what your culture's like?
So I would say if you had to do one thing, which has actually got 3 parts to it, but recognize that a culture is an organism, and like any organism, its first priority is to survive. To survive, it needs energy. Right? But a culture has an extraordinary need for energy. And that's because a culture's business is to be on constant input to take every piece of information it can discover, crunch it to extract hopefully reliable meaning about how do I survive in this world. Now, if the culture is just laying on the couch doing that, that would be exhausting enough. But the company's pushing it into constant forward motion. So the culture is supposed to move forward, and it's not sure if it's safe, so that costs energy. It has to keep defense shields up against the unknown. So my number one recommendation, demand all the energy you want from the culture, but you have to replenish it, and you do it in 3 ways. First of all is context. Can your culture understand why something is happening? Because if it can, if context is clear, this is the way the company rolls, well, then you have to use a lot less energy to figure that out. Yeah. Can the culture predict what's going to happen next? If you gave it 5, 10, 50 scenarios, said, how would the company act based upon what's important to it? Could the culture accurately say, here's how we would roll? And finally, sense of self. Can the culture take a positive sense of self from not just what the company does or even how it does it, but why it does it? Yeah. If you keep that, you can demand as much energy, but if you don't resupply, the culture is just going to get exhausted. And when a culture gets exhausted, like all of us, man, we're intolerant, rigid, inflexible, detached. Really, pissy and snippy are not cartoon characters. Yeah. They are a portrait of your culture when it's exhausted.
And a lot of this culture happens, in my case, I'm not in the headquarters, and I'm off meeting people outside of Rackspace all the time. But it happens on a Friday night when you meet with some rackers. We call them rackers, right? Rackspace employees. And we start drinking, we start talking. Oh, what's happening here? What's the politics like? Our stock price is doing something weird. What's going on? What does this really mean? And we walked around the streets of Palo Alto, right? Met startups and started talking to them about what's happening in the world. And that helps inform whether our culture is on track or not, and what should we shift personally and for the company, right?
Yeah, and that's where the conversations of the culture don't happen on a frequency that managers can hear. It's like whistles that only dogs can hear. And it's recognizing the culture will show you how it feels. It may not tell you what it feels. And it may not even respond when you say something. It's going to drag it back to its own cave and debate. So it's understanding how to create cultural legends, it's serve as proof points, it's how to just prepare to treat the culture the way it needs to be treated. More than anything, it's to respect that power. And the same is true for a customer culture. If you want to become a brand, you want to really transfer sustainability of your company to your customers, then you can't just create trust in a customer culture. Trust is easy. You just do what you say you're going to do, and when you don't do it, take care of it. You get trusted. If you're going to be a brand, you got to create faith, the highest level of trust. I believe, but I don't know. So a culture doesn't even like to trust because it could be vulnerable. To give faith, unfounded trust, that your customer culture is not going to do that unless it really believes in what you're saying. So it's that same respect. Either way.
So what am I going to learn about? You just sent me your book 2 days ago, and I was just swamped. What am I going to learn when I read this book?
It's a hell of a pithy read. I won't tell you how it ends, but everybody lives better. Okay. What you're going to read now? This is a book aimed at managers. It's got.
And I'm not a manager, so that's
you're managing something. You're managing yourself in the company. As sloppy a job as you're doing of that, right?
You just made friends with Rocky because he thinks I'm a sloppy manager.
Right. So tell you how to squeeze more productivity out of a slacker like Rocky. Okay, that's what this book will do for you. Right.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So, what this book will do is talk to you about why the biggest thing that your company wants from you, which is emotional commitment, will only come from you being able to live your own values at work. That's where emotional commitment comes from in a human being. The ability to live your own deepest values in a relationship or environment. So for you to do that, for you to give Rackspace what it wants, you would have to be able to live your deepest values in the relationship with the company and the environment at work. Yeah. That seems like a real easy thing. First, you'd have to know what the hell those values were. Yeah. Then you'd have to be able to turn them into a story of performance so the company allowed you to do it.
For me, no meetings and no bureaucracy.
Those are hardcore values. Same values Gandhi had. That's amazing, huh? So...
well honed at Microsoft.
Oh, indeed.
That's how I found out I had those values.
Yeah. And that's why you're at Rackspace.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Right. There's a story about...
Tuned up at Fast Company Magazine.
There you go. There's a story in this book about Orlando Ayala, who is the head of worldwide sales at Microsoft, and what this process did in terms of a personal epiphany. So... basically, it'll teach you that, and it will teach you how to make it safe to bring your own humanity to work. Yeah. and what will happen for you in the company when you do that. Hardcore stuff. It's a very real world book.
Yeah, Rocky and I both do things that are pretty untraditional for corporate America, right?
Really?
Yeah, really. Like for instance, on at South by Southwest, I was wearing a competitor's T-shirt, right? Because we went to their concert, right? Yeah, Rocky is not innocent. Anybody who says they're innocent is almost
Rocky
not.
was wearing the "I'm a stupid" T-shirt, right? Yeah. But
pretty much.
But that's the confidence. No, first off, that's the confidence of Rackspace. Rackspace isn't going to be shaken by that. They know what they're providing. They know how you can live here, and really, the new truth is that the first cause cannot always be the company. Yeah. It's also got to be managers' ability to practice true fulfillment in the company, and that isn't licensing chaos. That's ensuring control. There's no better way for the company to be the cause than by not always insisting on being the cause.
Yeah. And that's really rare. You see it with how people react to, company, and how they take risk. Very few people at big companies like taking risk, including here at Rackspace. It's hard to find somebody who will really take a risk and do something crazy.
Well, very few companies really are comfortable with the risk anyway, so they're getting what they're asking for. It's strange. Companies know that they want emotional commitment from their managers, but they're afraid of what it means. From the company perspective, if we set you free to pursue your own values, maybe you won't prioritize the company. Yeah. And you'll leave us and we'll die, okay? Well, you're already free. You're free to detach. That's about as free as you can get. The key is how to make you free to commit. Yeah. That's what Bury My Heart at Conference Room B is all about. And that's what a successful company is all about.
So the two things I named as values are negative values, right? I don't want to do those. The positive value is I want to see the new thing. That's what turns me on, right? New cars, new technology, new wearable computers, new cell phone apps, new whatever, and that fits well with Rackspace, right? Because it's a technology company that loves new things, right?
But there are a lot of technology companies that would say that they love new things, and when it comes to the internal culture and their insecurity about allowing you to pursue that, and if you turn your job into a mechanism for fulfilling your deepest personal values, you'll protect the mechanism. I mean, you'll make the company more successful because you don't want anything to happen to it. Now it's doing something for you it didn't do before. Yeah. And you think twice about leaving. This is a beautiful thing to put into play, right?
Absolutely.
So
we've been offered jobs at other great companies, and we turn them down, even with more money.
It's not the money, man. It's a culture uses money to buy meaning. It's not that the culture doesn't care about the money. It likes the money. It'll take the money, spend the money, and ask for more money. But really, what a culture is concerned about is, what does the money mean? Is it a reliable indicator that I'm safe? Does my performance reinforcement have embedded in it some respect for what truly means something to me? So the culture doesn't care about money as much as what money can't buy. Yeah. And the good news for any company is you got an unlimited budget to provide what money can't buy. The stuff that Rackspace does for you doesn't cost it money. Right?
Well, it does cost money.
Well, okay, that's a bad example. But conceivably, it wouldn't.
$22,000 for a TriCaster.
Yeah, okay, all right,
a little bit of money.
All right, we need to get off this conversation. Yeah. Okay, in your case, it costs a tremendous amount of money. But really, the idea of letting you pursue this, letting you explore the new, letting you wallow around the things that mean something to you, let your character permeate the people you connect with, be willing to trust you as an ambassador no matter where you go. Yeah. That stuff doesn't cost him money. That stuff requires confidence and an understanding of how cultures work and how to work them.
So I usually talk to startups. So startups are two guys at some incubator right now, which is how I saw Instagram, to 40 or 50 or maybe even 1,000 people at Twitter. When do you start caring about culture? Is it when you're two kids in a garage, or is it later?
It is. There's all sorts of metrics that you can attach to cultural commitment, but I think the most important one you can't see until the culture needs to show it, and that's if the company gets into trouble. Only a committed culture will step up and save it. Well, you can't bank that when you need it. You got to put it away ahead of time.
Here, let's go in here. Rocky's working. Which is a good thing.
Move from Rocky.
Yeah, he wants to prove that he's productive, right?
Yeah. I'm here, damn it. Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Okay, so I would say that. The other thing is that your customers are generally employees somewhere too. And so they're part of the overall employee culture. Now, when you're small, you really need to convince customers you can do what you say you can do, even if you can't prove that you can do it. One of the ways that they're going to decide is what kind of legitimate enthusiasm your people show for your product pricing and policies. Because they know, you know what, I'd never do that unless I was being treated with a certain type of deep and rare respect. Yeah. So in the early days when every sale, every win is hypercritical, that's when you, even if you have two people, even if you have somebody on the phone answering the phone, that employee culture to employee culture, that intuitive mind meld, that's going to serve you well.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the first interviews I did when I worked at Rackspace was with Tony Shea, who started, CEO of Zappos, and Graham, who's chairman here at Rackspace. And they looked back and they said, man, we wished we had put a mission in place earlier and a set of corporate values earlier. Is that something that you hear about?
One of the strongest recommendations we give to companies is don't put values up anywhere. Okay, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, for a couple of reasons.
Why?
Well, first of all, most companies, when they put up values, they're just strategies being pimped as values. Yeah. And the culture can tell the difference. One of the ways you tell the difference between a strategy and a value is put pressure on both. Now, you put pressure on a strategy and you're an adept strategic team, you change the strategy. You should change the strategy. You put that same pressure on a value, people fall on it with their lives to protect it from being changed. And if you present strategies as...
Explain a value. What would be an example of a value?
Value is a deeply held personal belief. So,
give me an example in a corporate world.
Well, actually, companies generally don't have values. People have values.
Right.
So you get a company like Rackspace. You have the people at the top that brought their own values to work, and they insisted everybody else be able to do the same. You get values of family and integrity and those kinds of things, freedom, and it can be anything, freedom, spirituality, learning, wisdom, creativity, accomplishment, adventure. But it's allowing people's own values to come into play. So most companies don't do that. And so they create this list of strategies and they don't protect them like values. Or they just create the list and that's the act of accomplishment right there. Or they create this list and some major revenue generator just tromps all over the list, nothing bad happens to them. Or they use the list of what's sacred internally as marketing collateral and violate that, or they just figure coming up with the list is the act of completion. We came up with the list. There's the list. Or any of these other sins. And when you do that, you've taken the most profound of human concepts, which are values, and pitched it to the most profound of human organisms, which is a culture, under false pretenses. And you fracture trust at a very deep level when you do that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's you're the kind of guy I could go out and have a beer with, because
nitro meets glycerin.
Yeah. Well, how many different companies do you study in a year?
We work at any given time. We work with 10 to 15 companies at a time because the work is pretty deep cultural work. But we study constantly. And my first book, I had a 23-person research team.
Wow.
Yeah.
My book doesn't have that.
On the second book, I have my 23 multiple personalities. So it's the same weight. It's just. Was easier to source.
But it's interesting because one of my side things is studying innovative cultures. Why did innovation happen here, and what's going on?
We could show you that. That's all the effect of a committed culture, and really understanding what will move a culture, and what won't it's just a mind blower. We always tell every CEO when we meet with them, we have what we call the Goldfinger Argument. So. James Bond's strapped to a table, right, and the laser beam is moving up, and he's frantically trying to negotiate his way out of it. And he says, if you kill me, they'll just send another agent to take my place. And Goldfinger gives him like that villainous eye roll, going, I don't think so, Mr. Bond. And it's just about, that beam is just about ready to reorg critical portions of his anatomy. He said, can you afford to take that chance? And the beam shuts off. And what we'd say to any company is, listen, if the last 10 strategies happened exactly the way you wanted them to, did exactly what they were supposed to do, when they were supposed to do it, cost what they were supposed to have, you probably don't even need to know the true motivations of your employee and customer culture. But considering that your company, your own legacy, your success probably rests on the next 10, can you afford to take that chance?
Yeah. How do Well, if you were at Apple right now, what do you think is going on there? I'm sure you're watching it because, hey, they had God. Right. God's not there anymore, and that's causing that culture to reevaluate what it's all about, right?
They've got God's chief operating officer, which isn't as sexy as having the man himself, right?
Yeah.
I think, first of all, Apple's a lot stronger. They've still got some really key people in there, and they've got a great fan base. I would say a couple of things. From a culture perspective, Apple's a notoriously tough place to work. It's secretive, it's cheap, it's intense. But what it does have is those three things I mentioned that energize the culture. There's total context of why Apple does what it does. Total predictability about what stand it's going to take. And you can work in the mailroom at Apple if they had one and go to a party and say, I work at Apple and be surrounded by sycophants. So culturally, I think they're far healthier from an internal side. From an external side, I would say there's a thin line between hip and hip to hate. And they are coming close to walking that line. Yeah. And so it's unseemly. This is something they should have learned from Microsoft. When you've got this much share, your customers are hypersensitive to abuse of power, even if it's not directed at them, even if it's directed at Samsung, because they got to wonder, well, gee, will you ever do that to us? It's just unseemly. Yep. And so Phil has got to stop talking down the competition. You never want to demonize the competition. Then you start acting like them. You get off your own game. They just got to be steady into what they've always believed and be very careful about that.
Yeah, that's really hard.
It is very hard.
Because you grew up in a world where you were the underdog and now you're the top dog, and that's a different skill set.
I feel good. Right? and Steve, what else can you say about Steve? I had a guy working for me for years who was a former senior vice president of worldwide marketing for Apple. And when Steve died, he said, I'm just remembering all the times I spent in one-on-one meetings with Steve, just me and Steve. I remember all the times I walked out of those meetings thinking of the innovative, remarkable, glorious ways I could kill myself. And, Steve was Steve, right? So whether they're going to keep that passion, they're going to keep that meaning inside the company, I would bet they would. It's a pretty deep, carefully built culture. But what they're showing to the outside is starting to fray some.
Yeah. We want Apple to be innovative and interesting, and they aren't showing that. Google is with the self-driving car and the glasses, and Google's doing other things wrong, like killing Reader, but that doesn't really matter to most people. The glasses are aspirational and tell me, hey, this culture is moving places and is going to fill the void left by Steve, right?
Well, what a brand is saying is you will know us by our intention. And that's why if the messages that are coming out, they're getting the press is, Samsung this, Samsung that, Google this, Google that. What's the intention? One of the things that Apple, from a brand perspective, always did very well that most companies missed. They recognize you sell a product and a process for buying the product. Yeah. And the DNA that you claim in your product has got to be represented immaculately in the process. So if Apple were to claim we're sexy, simple, customer-centric, fun, you don't know really what's in that box, what's in that. But if you go into an Apple store and the experience is this visceral confirmation of sexy, simple, customer-centric, and fun, you grant the company credibility for what you don't understand.
Yep.
They can't lose that. This is the time they have to exaggerate all that stuff and keep their squabbles with the competition private. The customer is not infatuated with Apple's revenue concerns. You got to talk to the customer, and that's what Steve had. There was a reason. If Steve was selling widgets, he would have been the same guy. Probably would have been fired from the widget factory. But the same guy was why companies that become brands, they're very good at what they do and very good at how they do it. Yeah. But they're driven by why they do it. What I see fading in the messaging from Apple is why we believe in this stuff.
Yeah.
And they got to get that back.
I wonder how they're going to do it with Tim in charge.
I don't think Tim can do it. I think Johnny could do it.
Johnny can tell me why something looks the way it does. I don't get the feeling that from Johnny that he's the guy to tell me, how Apple's going to bring me into the Google Glasses or self-driving car world or into the contextual world that I'm writing about.
Fair enough. You need that ornery worldview. You need this special skill. Guy. Yeah, I think you could deconstruct Steve's genius about anticipating market trends, and I'm not taking anything away from what he did, but you could have people that helped you do that. The other thing is the maturation of Apple, maybe taking this incredible fan base and just saying, as this company grows, we now need to socialize what we do in a different way. We can't be the sermon coming from the mount. We had to leverage, as this company moves into middle age, we had to gain the same power by making this an inclusionary company. We can still dazzle, we can still surprise, but I think the company growing bigger, getting bigger and growing up are not the same thing. Yeah. And I think the company really has to look at, well, who is it? You know, are you going to be 60 and still be wearing those ripped up jeans? This is embarrassing, man. You know, like, so I think the company really needs to look at how they take what they had and reconceive it.
Unless you're Neil Young.
Unless you're Neil Young. That's true.
He can wear ripped up jeans.
Yeah, man, he can. Yeah, there's Neil.
Yeah.
There's Neil.
Where do I get the book, and where do I follow you?
The book, wherever books are sold, which is only Amazon.com now, apparently. The book is called Bury My Heart at Conference Room.